To my colleagues and the members of the audience for being a little bit late. Those cameras, I'll tell you, those cameras. Let's call the roll to establish a quorum.
Senators Alquist? Here. Alquist here. DeLeon? Here. DeLeon here. Fuller? Here. Fuller here. Harman? Here. Harman here. Steinberg?
Here.
Steinberg here.
A quorum has been established. Let us begin to file item 1, reference of bills. Any objection to any of the...
There is a brief discussion piece on the front about the disposition of bond measures.
Let's hold off on that then. We'll wait till we get to the main attraction here today, and that is file item 2, the governor's appointees. Appearing today is Martin W. Morgenstern, otherwise known as Marty Morgenstern, who is up for confirmation as the Secretary of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. And I know our colleague, Senator Lonnie Hancock, is here to introduce Mr. Morgenstern. Would both of you mind coming up, please? Senator Hancock, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And members of the committee. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce Marty Morgenstern, a man for all seasons and a longtime constituent, to be confirmed as the Secretary of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. Mr. Morgenstern has for decades been an advocate for labor. He's been management with 2 stints as Director of Personnel Administration in the state of California, and an academic, retiring in 1993 as Chair of the Center for Labor Research and Education at UC Berkeley. Marty Morgenstern knows the people, he knows the process. He will make a great Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development. I've talked with him. He's committed to making the many governmental units he will lead as efficient and effective as possible. He recognizes that, especially in these very difficult times, it's essential that we find ways to streamline and coordinate state government. And we need to focus on what is important. He has the experience to actually do this, to make the agency work well with less bureaucracy and without sacrificing its mission of protecting workers, helping the unemployed, and putting Californians back to work. We are so fortunate to have him willing to come back into public service at this time and lead these agencies. And I'm delighted to recommend his appointment.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgenstern, welcome to you, and so glad that you're before the Rules Committee here early in the administration. We have a tradition here in the committee to allow a nominee to introduce any family member, close friends, and then to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My wife is here, Dr. Sylvia Pizzini, who's spent 40-plus years working for the welfare of children in the state of California, and she was able to sneak an hour or 2 off from her 2 jobs to come by and support me at this effort.
Well, welcome to you, and thank you. Thank you very much. So, I guess the question is why?
I want to thank Senator Hancock. I was honored to be appointed by the governor to head of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and I thank the committee for taking this up so quickly. Obviously, I'm not new to public service. This is my 4th time through this process, I believe. And why? I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, actually. I went to a public university on the GI Bill. So I knew right away there's a couple of things government does well. And in fact, I think we do a lot. I believe in government. I believe government is here to help. most of the time we do. Most of the time we do a pretty good job of it, and I find working for government and serving the people, that's what all of us do. I think the elected officials, appointed, the civil service, we're all here to serve the public, to serve the society, and I find that gratifying. I find that a rewarding experience. I will admit that on this occasion, the governor offered me an opportunity that was more than I expected at this point, but I'm very grateful that he did. We're at a very difficult time. I know our unemployment rates are double, and anybody in my position has to think jobs, jobs, jobs. But we also have all the other important work of this agency and of worker protections, of unemployment insurance. A lot of this stuff is new to me, but all I can say is I take the job on earnestly. I don't take the responsibility lightly, and I promise you I'll work to the best of my abilities to serve you and the state of California and the people of California.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get into some of the subject matters and have a public discussion about how we can work together to help improve, reduce the unemployment rate, and how we can make these agencies work even better on behalf of the people. Who would like to start? Senator Ahlquist?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you today and to have had our nice discussion yesterday. Like you, I was the first in my family, at least in America, to graduate from high school, college, and graduate school. As you know, California has an unemployment rate of 12.4%, representing about 2,250,000 people. So we have people who are out of work. At the same time, we have bright young new entrants into the workforce, to the job market, who will be looking for jobs. They're straight out of school, and they really need jobs. So in terms of the macro issue, which you and I talked about yesterday, what do you foresee as the jobs of the future?
Well, as I said yesterday, when I saw that my 4-year-old grandchild can manage that little thing better than I can and get everything on I recognize, of course, that internet technology and the new technology is the future of employment, the future of work, the future of the production of jobs in the United States and probably in the world, and certainly here in California. So we're going to have to concentrate on internet technology, on green jobs. The governor feels green jobs are very, very important, and we want to do everything we can to help bring green jobs to California, and that will be a difficult task, but I think I do know I was exposed at Berkeley at the Labor Center to some of the efforts being made now in apprenticeship programs to create green jobs, and I know it hasn't been that easy. There's been more promise than delivery in that area. Hopefully we'll be able to do everything we can to help create green jobs, help to create the jobs of the future in this state.
Thank you. California receives $400 to $500 million from the feds, double that amount this year from ARA for workforce training. 85% of those funds go to California's 49 local workforce investment boards. How can we best use those dollars to train those who are unemployed for these new jobs of the future?
Well, that's right. 85% goes to the local workforce investment boards. The other 15% is called governor's discretionary money, but that discretion is exercised together with the legislature. Mm-hmm. We can't dictate to the local districts. There are 49 of them around the state. They're locally constituted. I think we might be able to set a better example. It's very much our desire. I think I said before, the governor would like to see more apprenticeship programs. We'd like to see everything we do, every training program, lead to a job. To see more of a direct relationship between the training programs and the jobs. I don't know that that's always been the case. As I said, we can't dictate to the local agencies, but we certainly can try and set an example and to set up some standards that we hope they would follow. One of the ideas I know abroad is 49 districts is a lot. There are not really 49 different job markets in the state. It might be much better or an advantage if we can get several of these districts to work together, to work jointly in creating some of these training programs that lead to jobs.
Thank you. And my last set of two questions, which are related to each other. In your letter to the Rules Committee, you said, at this point, I can tell you that in creating the Labor Workforce Development Agency, we added a layer of bureaucracy. So my two questions are, given your statement, and I can repeat these later, what role do you believe the agency should have? What do you believe the agency should do? And how do you plan on making the agency something other than an added layer of bureaucracy? So however you want to answer all that.
I'm not sure.
And that's the end for me.
I'm not sure exactly how, but I am working on it. The idea was to get these two labor-related functions working more in concert. And maybe to some degree we did do that. But as I said in my letter, we ended up with 31 people and a budget of over $3 billion. Now those people aren't all agencies. Some of them were stolen from the two departments. But I do think I think it's a bit much. I think, especially in this time and these difficulties, that we want to slim that down, or we might want to even do more of a reorganization plan. There's a lot of feeling that the various economic development features of our agency should be working with those in B&T or now in the governor's office, and maybe we need a more logical structure, and I think we definitely need a less bureaucratic structure. The agency's already slimmed down by not filling vacancies. We've got 2 or 3 different options that I was hoping by April 1st, that might be a little optimistic, but I'm hoping by April 1st to be able to go to the governor with a couple of different options on how we could be more efficient, how we could deal with the economic development needs and all the others of the agency with a little less bureaucracy.
Thank you, Mr. Morgenstern.
Thank you.
Senator Fuller?
Thank you. I know that last week the U.S. Chamber of Commerce rated California in the bottom tier of states as it relates to business friendliness. And the Chamber of Commerce's report stated that California has some of the most complex labor and employment laws in the nation. And in your response to this committee, you said that there is much attention to whether California is overregulated and a renewed emphasis on evaluating each department's regulations to determine whether they are necessary, overly burdensome, duplicative, or unduly complicated. Now, if that question wasn't unduly complicated, forgive me. But having once asked that mouthful, I was delighted to hear your response, and I was hoping that you might be able to shed some light on how you might conduct this kind of regulatory review, and how will you keep us sort of appraised of that, or is there a report coming?
Well, thank you, Senator. I think first I have to answer the last question, which is to say, looking at form following function, I want to kind of see how we should be structured. I looked at the DIR organizational chart where most of our regulations are under workers' comp and OSHA and labor law enforcement. We have 58 boxes on the organizational chart. We have 4 of them relating to OSHA and workers' comp. I suspect that might be too many. I don't know, but it does seem like a lot. Now, nothing got there by accident. There were people who wanted it. There were functions to be done. We're not going to stop protecting workers or doing the things we're supposed to do. But I think before we can take a look at the regulations, I have to have some of that reorganization in place, and I need a few people to help me. We've had one appointment so far. We'll probably be making a few more appointments in the coming weeks and months. And one of the first tasks I'm going to give my new team is to try and look at the regulations and see where we can streamline them, see which are strictly needed, which aren't. Maybe, maybe we need some new ones to replace the old ones that are more efficient. But I really can't honestly tell you at this point on what day we're going to have a regulation review to submit to you, but I hope it is something that's going to be high on the agenda as soon as we get the structure in place and a few more people.
Thank you. Well, I'll be hopefully waiting to see how that comes out for you. I know you have a really huge job, and I agree with our chair that we're even glad that you're willing to take the post. Now, having said that, one area that I'll be particularly interested in is if you find that employers are truly and employees are truly having a difficulty with their work schedule and the flexibility, and if we might need to try to figure out a way to allow a little more flexibility for everyone's benefit.
Well, obviously, everyone wants flexibility, and to the degree we can do it, we should. And I know that the laws doesn't have some flexibility into it. There are some electoral processes built in and exclusions, but if they're not working well enough, then I think we should look at that, absolutely.
Senator Harman.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I appreciate that. And Mr. Morgenstern, thank you very much for coming today and taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me yesterday and answer some questions that I had. There's one particular area, though, that I am interested in, and it deals with potential efficiencies in saving the state money as it relates to workers' compensation claims made by state employees. And I'd like to encourage you to think about and look at the possibility of establishing some form of a alternative dispute resolution approach prior to an injured employee getting into the formal adjudication phase by filing an application for benefits. I would think it would be strictly voluntary, but I have heard that there is a potential for saving many, many millions of dollars, perhaps, if we had that kind of a program. And I think it kind of falls under your jurisdiction, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you would, sir. I'd be interested in your thoughts on implementing such a plan.
Well, in general, I certainly believe in alternative dispute resolution. The less formal
As do I.
Yeah, the less formal we can get, the better. The more likely we are to bring agreement. The cases settled are a lot cheaper and better than cases litigated. And so I think that's a good idea. I tried to do some of that when I was at DPA, and workers' comp was a big problem for us. Well, it wasn't that long ago. Back then. So anything I can do to help on that, I will. And I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you very much. I had nothing further.
Senator De Leon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pro Tem. Mr. Morgenstern, welcome. A couple questions. I think one that we addressed when we were together, the whole issue of UI. As you know, we're one of 5 states nationwide that are at a risk status according to the Federal Department of Labor. I know you have had conversations with the Department of Labor, and I had suggested that you have a direct conversation with Secretary Hilda Solis as well with regards to the UI. Obviously, we're there. One of 5 states nationwide are at risk status because our less than prompt processing, if you will, of claims and appeals. Why don't you share a few thoughts with us today with regards to the UI and the underfunding also as well.
Excuse me?
The underfunding of UI.
Yeah. Yes, we got the at-risk letter from the Secretary's office, and the last one seemed to indicate that while we're still at risk, we seem to be doing better, and they're happy with that, and I responded, and I think we provided the letters.
We got a copy of the letter. Yes, we did.
Letters there. It's a difficult problem. We have we're behind. There's no question about it. I think we're up to from 51 to 43 on the list of states, but that still isn't good. But we have had about a 30% improvement in both the appeals board cases and the initial granting of unemployment insurance, and would like to continue to work to get better. I will admit it's a little difficult with a job freeze, and we don't feel that we can, the governor does not feel at this point we can lift the freeze, but we are trying to work more efficiently. The judges are taking some of the tax cases on. That should help things, and they say incidentally bring us an extra $50 million this year in settlements, so that would be good. All I can say is that we're aware of the problem. We think we got some things in place to help. The technology is supposed to be better at this point, so the UI can talk to UIB, and hopefully we'll continue to improve and talk to the secretary too about what we can do to meet her needs without having to go into mass hiring, which we don't think we can do at this point.
Sure. Mr. Morgenstern, we have outstanding balance of about $10 billion loan from the feds to us, with outstanding payment due in September of roughly about $300 million. I'm not asking you to sort of look in the crystal ball, but do you see any possibility with Secretary Hilda Solis and others in Washington that perhaps they could either reduce that payment, or altogether perhaps even forgive that payment?
Well, the president had suggested, President Obama suggested in his budget that we put off all the states' obligations until 2013, which would be a help, and that would, as you say, I think we recalculated that figure so that we owe about $270 million this year in interest payments. The $10 billion, of course, is an obligation, but not an obligation of the state, but of the employers. Nevertheless, we don't particularly want to see our employers have to pay $10 billion right away. It won't help the state's economy any. My understanding is the president's budget is also asking us is going to require states raise the wage base from $7,000 to $15,000. Well, that'll take care of, won't take care of, but it'll probably help the problem going forward. It won't do anything about the $10 billion that we already owe, but it means we'll accumulate less of a problem going on in the future. Aside from that, fixing this issue is not going to be easy. I don't think any of us are going to be eager to cut the unemployment benefit, and I don't think any of us are going to be eager to raise the tax on employers. So dealing that problem in the future is not one that anybody can wave a magic wand on.
Sounds like the budget.
What? But hopefully it will get a little bit better if the president, I certainly hope President Obama's budget that will excuse us from having to make interest payments for a couple of years will be what happens. And when our economy comes zooming back and that unemployment rate goes back down to 5 or 6%, that should help a great deal too.
One last question, Mr. Pro Tem, if it's okay. As Secretary of Labor, obviously your role is going to be a very pivotal one, given the fact that we have one of the highest unemployment rates in California, or in the nation, I should say, given our disproportionate impact on the subprime debacle crisis in the housing industry explosion, and therefore with all the foreclosures, with the construction folks who are currently unemployed or underemployed right now, and any foreseeable jobs in the housing industry coming to fruition looks very, 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 very bleak. This is a question I asked Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Resources, Mr. John Laird, too, with regards to efficiencies and a new frontier of jobs, and how do we retrain those who are currently underemployed as well as unemployed to fulfill potential future jobs. Would you be working and collaborating and communicating with Secretary of Resources Laird, too? Is my question.
Yes, it's one of the things that we want to do is get better collaboration throughout state government with Secretary Laird, with the governor's office, and perhaps with other agencies on economic development, so that we can do more to create jobs in California and train people for the jobs that we hope will be creating. One of the problems we've had, I think, is that some of the training program monies we had have not led directly to employment and haven't been that pragmatically oriented, if you will, and I'd certainly like to see that. And the governor right now, the governor's office right now, as my understanding, is trying to zero in on the 2 or 3 things that we can do best to help the state's economy come back. And then we're going to try and put together a form that meets that function.
Okay. Thank you much, Mr. Parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. I have 2 areas that I would like to explore with you. And one is to pick up on where Senator De Leon just left off and what Senator Alquist had mentioned earlier about the workforce training funds, which hundreds of millions of dollars have come to California, and as you just acknowledged, I think in your last answer to Senator De Leon, with some mixed results. Not all have led to jobs. And to me, it begs the question whether or not we ought to, in some ways, have a wholesale review of how we are spending those hundreds of millions of dollars. And specifically what I refer to, and I know Senator Hancock, who introduced you a few moments ago, is passionate about the issue of career technical education, and whether or not part of your work and a priority of your work ought to be working with the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, and others to try to move some of those monies upstream to high schools for high school career technical education pathways. This is a pretty common theme in a lot of our confirmation hearings here, because it's really, to me, and I think to members of the committee, it's a vital piece of our economic development and workforce preparation strategy. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts about career technical education and your agency's role in working with the public education system to try to make sure that more dollars are not spent just on remediation for people who have fallen out or dropped out, but to actually prevent them from dropping out in the first place.
I feel pretty strongly about the whole school-to-work situation in this country. When I was at Berkeley, a report came out talking about the fact that in the United States there seemed to be very little that was done vocation-wise for the non-college bound high school student. I think part of that may have been a fear of tracking. We don't want to track people out of college if they want to go to college. But the fact of the matter is, obviously, millions of students, millions of young people do not go to college and don't get any vocational preparation. I can't remember the name of the guy that wrote the report now. I'm blanking on it. But there was a report out about how the European nations did a lot more apprenticeship-type programs with high school kids for banks, for retail establishments, for insurance firms, and we kind of spun our wheels a little bit. I think I mentioned in that letter I sent out. We tried to help in that regard, and at that time nothing much did happen. But certainly I would like to pursue every effort we can to create vocational training for people in high schools and even earlier, to see to it that they win. Not everyone's going to go to college. Not everyone's going to graduate from college. Not everyone's going to be an IT specialist. And we should be. It's important for our economy, and it's important for young people to be able to do that. What can we do? I mean, that's a tall order. You're right there, $500 million come into the Workforce Investment Board. Last year it was $1 billion because we had the ARA funds. I think it does fall back to $500 million. We only have so much control over that because there are federal regulations that dictate that the local establishments control the money, but there's no reason that we can't be encouraging them and sending out models, developing and sending out models for them to follow where we do more transitional work so that so we can expand the apprenticeship programs. Construction grades are great for the apprenticeship programs, but we don't have them in many other places. We do have some in corrections, and maybe state government can do more of that.
Will you make this issue of linking workforce development with high school education a priority of your office?
Yes.
Thank you. That was the right answer. Second area that I'd like to explore is the issue of the underground economy, and especially as we struggle here in Sacramento and the country suffers state by state with these terrible budget deficits. There are some studies which say that in California there are billions of dollars in unreported taxable income wages every year because of the violation of various labor laws. And I know that several agencies, including the Joint Strike Force on the Underground Economy, obviously the EDD, the DOJ, the Economic Employment Enforcement Coalition, the Franchise Tax Board, BOE, and others are all working on this. And I know with some success, especially in targeted industries. But what can you say about the status of our efforts here, and what can we do to improve them? I might just add parenthetically that while it's obviously a tax and a labor issue, it's also a business issue. Because if you're following the rules and your competitor is not, then you're at a competitive disadvantage and unfairly.
Well, yeah, I've been visited by at least 2 or 3 business organizations who said exactly that. They want a level playing field. They don't want unfair competition. And the problem is, I can understand why there is so much money, so many violations out there. When you sit down and start to talk to staff about what goes on and how businesses go in and businesses go out and people use other businesses' licenses, it's a very difficult problem to deal with. You mentioned the EEC, Economic Employment
Enforcement Coalition.
Yeah, EEC, as they call it. That was an effort put together about 3 or 4 years ago. It has 66 people in it. It tries to work across lines with some of the agencies you mentioned: OSHA, EDD, Workers' Compensation, Labor Law Enforcement Office. It tries to work across those lines to try and help deal with the problem, catch more of the cheaters. And maybe we can expand that effort. Maybe we can make that effort a little more quality to it. There have been some complaints that it's kind of a hit-and-run agency. I've gotten complaints that they have sometimes gone into areas without an expertise. So hopefully we can improve that, and maybe we can add people to it. Another problem that we've had among the many agencies, EDD finds out that someone's not paying taxes over there. There's a pretty good chance that if they're not paying their EDD taxes, they're not paying workers' comp, or they're violating some other law. But there is a limitation, they feel, on their legal right to share that information. Right now, EDD is sharing it with workers' comp, but the consumer agency, the consumer affairs departments that do this, like the construction board and some of the others there, are not getting the information they want. EDD is something we might have to come to you for a law to clarify what information can be shared and what information cannot be shared. We also might have to zero in on other industries than the ones we are. I think right now there are 7 different industries: agriculture, retail, auto repair, several others that are scrutinized the most because we feel those are the juiciest areas to catch labor law violators. I think we might be looking to expand those and go into other areas that are untouched. And finally, we have a new labor commissioner who has spent,
Julie Sue.
who you've been acquainted with, who spent 17 years doing labor law enforcement, and I'm hoping that with her help and with the help of other people that we'll be bringing in over the next several months, that we'll put together a team that will be able to improve the job we do on labor law enforcement. We don't want unnecessary regulations. We don't want more regulations than we do. We don't want to harass business, but we do want to see to it that we protect workers, which I think all of the businesses, certainly all of the legitimate, prosperous businesses in this state will support. That kind of approach that allows us to protect workers, but do it more efficiently and without interfering with business.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morgenstern. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee. I would ask, since there is an array of support, if folks could make their testimony relatively brief so that we can move through it. Mr. Wetch.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the State Association of Electrical Workers, the California State Pipe Trades Council, California Coalition of Utility Employees, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the Elevator Constructors Union. We've had a long history of involvement with Mr. Morgenstern, and there just couldn't be somebody more respected across the board. I think the fact that he has served for so many years in public office and to have such universal support is something that's pretty rare and testimony to the inclusive nature in which he makes decisions, and so we would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, here to express our strong support. This really is a moment where we need big vision and big thinking on how to rebuild the middle class in California, how to revive our economy, how to bring labor and management together to create good jobs and put people back to work. And so we have total confidence in this nominee, that he is up to the task, that he is respected by all sides, that he has significant experience and depth of understanding of the issues, and we are pleased and happy to support this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, George Soares on behalf of the California Grocers Association and the thousands of grocery stores that are part of that association. We've had the opportunity to meet with the Secretary recently. We appreciate his openness, his accessibility. We like the fact that he knows the subject matter. We like the fact that he knows the process. We also like the fact that we think we can be at the table with him working on the big issues of the day to try to find resolution that we also desperately need. So with that, the Grocers Association supports the appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Soares.
Mr. Chairman and members, Jai Suprasit with the California School Employees Association. We represent 212,000 classified school employees across our state, and we're also here in strong support of Mr. Morgenstern. He has done an incredible amount of work to improve the lives of our members, and we look forward to working with him again. We're here in strong support of his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Senators, I'm Mary Ann Massenberg. I'm a representative for the UAW Local 2865. We represent 12,000 teaching assistants at the University of California under the jurisdiction of the Public Employment Relations Board under the Labor Agency. And we've known Marty for many years, and we fully support his nomination. In the year 2000, we were negotiating our first contract with the university for the 12,000 workers, and after 17 years of contentious this relationship. Marty was lucky enough to be appointed by the then Senator Pro Tem John Burton and the governor to be our mediator, a thankless job. And he was terrific. I think both the university and the union would say that he was fair and creative and respected by all sides, and most of all funny, which was an important thing to have, and a sense of humor, I'm sure, is what he'll be needing as well. So we heartily support him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massenberg. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, President Pro Tem, members of the committee. My name is Barry Bedwell. I'm president of the California Grape and Tree Fruit League. Our members grow the fresh table grapes and peaches, plums, nectarines, apricots, a wide list that account for almost $2 billion of the farm gate value of California out of the 35-plus billion. Labor is our biggest cost. It is our biggest concern in many ways. So when we heard about the appointment of Secretary Morgenstern, we immediately made an effort to meet with him to understand some of our thoughts and concerns. We were graciously granted an audience and plenty of time to talk about the issues, and I would say that openness and transparency is what we look for. We're looking for a situation where we have the ability to communicate. And this individual has indicated that willingness to communicate, and that's what we really look for. It's also said that while I haven't had the pleasure of knowing the Secretary-designate for that long, you can judge a man's character by his friends. I happen to know many of his close friends, and they have said nothing but wonderful things about him, and as such, we wholeheartedly support his confirmation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bedwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brad Deedy. I'm with the California Professional Association of Specialty Contractors, called CalPASC. We represent both signatory and non-signatory employer construction companies and material suppliers across the state of California. And we're one of those employer groups who met with Mr. Morgenstern early on this year about the whole concept of the problems associated with the underground economy and what we call in some cases the semi-underground economy, because you have some very sophisticated licensed construction contractors out there as well who are figuring out ways to skirt the system. And Mr. Morgenstern is very open to the concept. We have some ideas about how to help, and he's very much open to listening to that. And in fact, we look forward to working with him in the future and highly recommend him to the position. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Mr. Reed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members, Aaron Reed, representing the California Association of Highway Patrolmen, CDF firefighters, PORAC, professional engineers, and California government and state scientists. I've had the great pleasure of knowing Marty for more than 35 years. Actually longer than that, but then you'll start figuring out how old we are. I can also tell you, and I want to agree with the chair, why did he want to do this again? We're pleased and thrilled and delighted that he did. And I agree with Senator Hancock when she's noted his experience. He's been on both sides of the table, and I've been on the same side of the table with him as I am right now, but I've also been on the other side of the table. And he's tough, but he's fair. He can say no to labor and has. I've been there and seen it. He's compassionate, though, in the way he does his work. He always treats employees with dignity and with respect, the same way that you treat your employees. He does the same. So even if he does say no, he does it with compassion. So we hope that he brings the same skill, or I know he'll bring the same skills to the job he has now. And I'm just glad he's back, and I look forward to working with him on the few occasions we get to do it.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron.
Mr. Henning.
Senator, I might not have 35 years, but there's at least 3 generations of Hennings that have worked with Mr. Morgenstern.
Good enough.
In total longer than 35. But Mr. Morgenstern has a breadth of knowledge and experience that makes him unique for this appointment at this critical time. And we fully support from the California State Council of Labor his appointment.
Thank you very much.
Bob Purcell, Director of the Public Employee Department for the Laborers International Union of North America. I was Marty's board counsel when he was member of PERB 1982, 83, 84. So I don't have 3 generations of experience with Marty, but within one lifetime, at least 3, a number of years. And on behalf of the Laborers International Union and public employees throughout the International Union and the state of California, we fully support Marty's confirmation and commend Marty for taking on the responsibility and for his vision in attempting to meet the challenge that's going to be necessary to address California's budget deficit and California's future immediately. Thank you, Marty.
Thanks. Thank you. Next, Ms. Farias.
Hello.
Hello.
Nancy Farias with SEIU Local 1000, representing 95,000 state employees, all here to say congratulations. We certainly support Marty Morgenstern's appointment, and also as a fellow East Coaster, it's wicked cool.
Good afternoon. Michelle Cass with the Service Employees International Union, the California State Council, representing 750,000 public sector and private sector workers in California. We're proud to support Marty, and we couldn't think of anybody who is better able to serve in the capacity of Secretary of Labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying.
Deanna Furman on behalf of the California Nurses Association. We too want to add our names to support Marty for this position. We think he's uniquely qualified, and we couldn't think of a better candidate.
Thank you.
Marty Fisher on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and we've really appreciated the discussions that we've had with Marty thus far. And anybody who's named Marty is, you know.
The Marty Caucus.
And we do look forward to a continuing relationship, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Cynthia Leon with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We're here with great pleasure to support Marty Morgenstern. We believe that he definitely is taking on a huge task, but we are in extraordinary times, and there is the need for this type of experience to really look carefully at how we can make the labor agency work for both employers and employees alike. And we're specifically supportive of his efforts to look at training dollars and making sure that every single training dollar that comes into the state actually correlates to a job. We're really hoping that our membership of, we represent about 1.5 million. We should be representing 2 million manufacturers in the state of California, and we hope we can meet those goals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We agree with you, Senator Steinberg, that we're all very lucky that somebody of Marty's skill set, experience, and knowledge base agreed to take this job. We're happy to support him in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senate members, and Mr. Morgenstern, Secretary Morgenstern. I'm Lori Kammerer. I represent Small Business California. We have approximately 5,000 small businesses statewide, mom and pop shops. And I have to tell you, we looked at your bio, your resume, and we were very impressed. We are very excited to be working with Secretary Morgenstern. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Chris Lewis. I'm a board member of Peace Officers of California. We represent the interests of a vast array of state peace officers and associations, which include the California Fish and Game Warden Association and the newly created California State Park Peace Officers Association. And we strongly support Marty Morgenstern for Secretary of Labor.
Thank you very much for coming to testify. Sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. George Osborne, representing the California Fish and Game Wardens Association, in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The numerous people in opposition, would you please come forward, if there's anybody? I don't think there is anybody. That's just great. Look, I did sort of half sarcastically ask why, because obviously, you didn't have to take the call of public service one more time, and yet you've chosen to do so. And I know we appreciate it. I think the people of California will appreciate it. And there's a lot to do. You're right. You're entering back into public service around the same time we're all struggling with the same challenges, right? How to improve the economy, how to balance the budget, how to create a high-wage workforce. And it's exciting as well as daunting, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. I was able to tell the governor-elect, no, I don't think so, a couple of times, but Ann was a lot more difficult to deal with.
I can imagine.
I hope we can, I'll do my very best to do a good job, and I hope you can invite all these people back in 6 months and a year, and they'll like me as much.
Yes. Is there a motion? Moved by Senator Alquist. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Very good. This nomination will go to the floor of the Senate, where it will be taken up forthwith.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let us complete our business here. Let's go back to file item 1, if we might. I know, Mr. Schmidt, you had a report on the reference of bills.
There's the bill references are fine. There's a.
I think you want to get the. You're on.
There's a question.
We'll wait just a second. Okay. We'll wait. What did he say? It's a tough call. All right, Mr. Schmidt.
The question is the disposition of bills relating to bonds. Under the current rule and traditional practice, state bond bills went to the GO committee. Local bond bills went to the pertinent policy committee. If it was a hospital bond, it went to health. Transportation went to transportation. The issue is, do we want to continue that way, or do you want to refer the state bonds to the new governance and finance committee? And as for the local bonds, do you want to send those to the governance and finance committee, or do you want to do dual reference to the appropriate policy committee, and then whichever one you chose to be the committee for state bonds?
Senator Harmon, Mr. Vice Chair, do you have a strong opinion on this?
Well, I think I would favor the latter one that he described, sending them to the state bonds to the newly created, I can't say the name, Greg.
Governance
and finance.
Does that make sense? Is that sort of the recommendation that you're making, if any?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, and the local bonds to be dual referred to that committee and the relevant policy committee.
That makes sense to me. I'm flexible.
Why wouldn't we also dual refer the state bonds to the new committee and the policy committee? In other words, shouldn't the education bond, for example, state education bond, be heard by the education committee?
We just haven't done it in the past. There's no reason why not.
I like the idea of sort of the subject matter experts, the staff, and the members, having an ability to review.
I wonder, Mr. Chair, we just got this proposal.
Sure.
Could we put this over a week and give us a moment to think about it? It is a rather significant decision of where these bond issues would be referred. Does that work?
It's fine. Not a problem. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions on items 3 through 7 plus the walk-on item from Senator Gaines? Any concerns? If not, let's take a motion by Senator Harmon. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. DeLeon? Aye. DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Very good. That passes 5-0. That's our agenda for today. We stand in adjournment. Thank you.